I hope I have lots of more days I can shine in the future. But you know what? If not, it's not the end of the world. Like, I'm not out to see how many victories I can get. I'm out to enjoy the journey. For me, it's not about, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. The better I do, the better person I am. That's totally not it. It doesn't matter how many victories I have. For me, it's enjoying the journey and really setting the example to others. And like my son, like I want him to know, like, hey, never give up, do the best you can. Because you know what? That goes a long ways, not just in triathlon, but every aspect in life, through school, through your job, through relationships, through everything. And that's the really example that I want to do. And, you know, hey, I'm going to do the best I can to win another Ironman. Hopefully I can win many. But you know what? If I don't, that's okay. At least I tried my best.
Welcome back to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. I'm Jess, your host. And along with my co-host, Coach BJ, we are on a mission to create a better world. A big part of that, of course, is this podcast and fulfilling our intention to bring meaningful conversations to the endurance sports world, but also through empowering every athlete out there to wake up to how powerful they truly are by putting the excuses and reasons to the side and embarking on a dedicated mental training practice through meditation and mindful living. This is not a mission of ease, and we have been beat up along the way. But when you know your purpose, which is the birthright of every single amazing human listening to this episode, then you know that there is no other choice. Staying safe and small is not an option for one with purpose on their heart. And we all have a purpose. We came here on purpose. There are no mistakes, and there is a beautiful divine plan for each one of us. It's our job to find it, to go in, to listen, to get still, and trust that what we see, taste, touch, smell, and hear is a very small part of the equation in which we exist. Our hope is that by diving under the surface of data and information, although we love that stuff too, that we can reveal the open-heartedness that goes hand in hand with top performances and the truth that no matter if we are professional or just beginning, we are not alone. At their essence, our challenges and dark moments of life are exact, no matter how they unfold in this physical reality. We are all subject to the human condition, which is why we believe that training the mind is a non-negotiable for every athlete out there. When we slow down every day from our intense training regimens, we open up to an acute awareness of how we move through the world, how our thought life conducts our reality, and the extremely precious gift of every breath we get to take. We find our way to this increased awareness of life on our unique timeline by our unique blueprint in this life. For some, it's gradual. For many, it's out of desperation for something more in life. And for others, like our guest today, it's by experiencing our worst fear. Matt Russell, American professional triathlete, is a veteran of the sport. He is a dad, a husband, a man with a strong faith, an Ironman Foundation ambassador, and a voice for the ALS community on account of a very personal experience of losing his mom at a young age to the disease. His first triathlon was the Lake Placid Mini Tri at the age of 16, and he's been a professional triathlete since 2011. Matt is a multi-time Ironman and 70.3 champion and no stranger to racing the best of the best on the Big Island every October. You'll hear athlete after athlete talk about the power and the energy of the island, and Matt is also no stranger to this. His son Makaio's life was conceived on the island in 2016, and just 1 year later, while racing on the world stage of triathlon, Matt almost lost his own. As he reeled down the road at 35 miles per hour on the backside of the bike leg, Matt had no idea that in an instant he would be riding the very thin line between life and death. BJ and I were watching the coverage that day, and I can still remember the depths of that sick feeling I experienced when the news broke. It was one of those moments where you just immediately feel the interconnectedness, compassion, and love of who we truly are. We are so grateful that Matt is with us today, as it is not every day that we gain perspective from a being who has met the energy of death and not only risen from it back into the light of life, But to come back to the Big Island in 2018, to race himself into sixth place and achieve his highest placement yet, finishing with an impressive 8 hours, 4 minutes, and 45 seconds. So without another moment passing, Matt Russell, thank you so much for being with us today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. And although there is a lot of good stuff we want to dive into, I believe that we'd be remiss if we didn't begin with this remarkable experience and the gift that you've been granted to continue to live. As we have a full encompassing audience, ultra runners, athletes, non-athletes, Ironmans, I would love for you to just share about what happened on that day on the island in 2017.
Yeah, 2017. I'd like to say, the island has given me a couple of gifts, and you already touched upon one. The gift of my son Makaio, and the other one is the gift of life. And the gift of life, really there is two ways to come out of the accident, and it'd be a negative one or a positive one. And every single thing I've done, I've tried to make it a positive one. And it's amazing what doors will open if you continue to have a positive attitude. And going back to the accident, I don't really remember a ton of it, and I think that's a blessing. I don't remember it. I do remember starting to come to in the hospital and asking the same questions over and over and over to my dad and my wife. I could have been stuck there, for the rest of my life, asking the same questions over and over again. And, really, I'm just thankful to be here, having a normal conversation, and that, I'm really blessed to be able to still do something that I love to the fullest of my potential. So it's been quite the journey, and there's definitely more in store for me. And I was literally, people don't know how close I was, but I was literally millimeters away from severing my internal jugular. I severed my external jugular, and my internal was exposed right there, and I literally almost bled to death. I guess at the scene of the accident, I was able to state my name, I think my date of birth, and where I was and what I was doing. And I tried to still continue to race, which seems normal to, anyone that's competing at that level. I was just kind of in shock. And then I think it was when I was in the ambulances when I started to lose consciousness. But yeah, I lost a tremendous amount of blood. I do remember the next day or so just walking down the hall, holding an IV in me, to kind of half keep me up. But literally I was out of breath because I had hardly any blood in my body, because I had lost, I can't remember how many liters it was, but it was multiple liters of blood. Really, there's more in store for me, and that's why I'm continue to do what I'm doing today. Trying to be the best husband, father, and athlete, and take one day at a time.
Yeah, and for people who don't know about the accident, Matt was going through an intersection, which in a race, we're just really handing over the trust to the people who are directing the intersections and things like that. But of course, looking alive, because that's what we do as athletes. And from what I understand, there was a truck that was waiting, and then a van came around the side of that truck, and impact was imminent. There was no time for you to stop. And essentially the stopping came from the impact with the car. And miraculously, you did not break any bones in your body.
Yeah. That's still a miracle. My head went through the side of the windshield, and that's what really, that's what opened up my neck. And I think it was, it's about 6 inches long by at least an inch, and it was deep. And I pulled out 3 pieces of glass from my neck, and I can still feel one piece of glass or foreign object in my neck. And I had a stitch right next to my eye, and I have a divot right under my on my cheekbone. But yeah, I didn't break a bone. I remember I moved the wrong way, or I guess you could say the right way, and I popped the rib back in, and that really hurt. That was like a week after, but yeah, it's a blessing that I didn't break a bone. And I definitely have had hard times and hard days, and there's a number of things that helps me get through the day, but one big thing that I've been doing is meditation. There's so many things I feel like meditation has done for me personally, and it just opens up my heart. And after a meditation session, I feel like I can do anything. And there's days where sometimes I don't really want to do it, but it's kind of like training in a way. After you're done, you're always glad. You always feel better, and that's one thing that I try to add on a daily basis.
So when did meditation come in to your life? Like, had you heard about it before, like the benefits, like the scientific benefits? What you're talking about is what I would consider like that connection to source or to God, or, whatever word people want to use, that limitlessness, right? Like I can do anything, and the open-heartedness, which is our essence, which is love. But prior to going to meditation, had you heard about it, like the scientific research and stuff? Like,
Yeah, I've definitely heard about it, and my dad had started doing it too. And I almost want to say something like my dad made a comment like, "Oh, you would never really be able to do it," or some kind of comment like that. But really, the thing is, anyone can do it, and there's many forms the way you can do it. And the way I first kind of stumbled upon it, I want to say back. It was right before Ironman Mount Tremblant in 2018, when Cody Beals and Lionel Sanders, they came 1-2, and I was actually right behind Lionel Sanders. I want to say the meditation that I did, I think it was the day before, a couple of days before. I think it was Wim Hof. And just focusing on the breathing. I just kind of did a 15-minute video on there, and that was the first time I ever did it. And after I did it, I was like, wow, that was pretty awesome. That was pretty cool. And I still practice that one, Wim Hof. I also do other types of meditation too, sometimes in the morning. And I actually quite often I do it after I'm done exercising, like on the bike. And it's amazing. Not just mentally, but physically. So I'll use the example yesterday. Yesterday, I'll talk about the whole day yesterday because it was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool day. Yesterday morning, woke up, had a good swim for about an hour, about 3,600 yards, and then I had to get my flat tire. I had to get a flat tire fix. Well, with a bike, no problem, but this is with a vehicle. And my son is almost 3 years old, big into cars. So we went and fixed the flat tire, and it was a big screw, and he got to save the screw after. And he loved it. And then after he wanted to go swimming, and then I was like, sure. That's why I went swimming with him. And he loves to swim. And there was a bunch of children, I think 9 children in the pool, the most I've seen. And there was a whole bunch of girls, and he was like chasing girls for the first time. So that was a kind of a special moment, trying to tickle them and stuff like that. So, and then I was like, well, I need to go back. I need to do this Zwift race. They have these series of 4 races, 4 races in the course of 4 weeks every Wednesday. And I thought I had the time right, but unfortunately I had missed the time. So I was like, just going right there, you could have be all negative, and they actually had some prize money in it too. And hey, I could have been really upset and pissed off about it, but I was like, I'll find another race. So I found another race on Zwift. It was only like a 5.6 mile race. I did it and pushed some really high numbers, and I actually ended up getting a max heart rate. The highest heart rate that I've ever done was 190. And then I cooled down for a while, and then I went right into my meditation. Actually, it was like 17 minutes of meditation. And then literally an hour before, my heart rate was up to 190. And I did meditation, just complete bliss. And one of the most grateful things is like being just appreciative of everything after I'm done. But I always kind of time it on my watch, and it checks my heart rate. And physically, my heart rate went from 190 right down to 40 when I was meditating. With training, I like to see information and numbers and things like that. But so right there just shows you how physically it helps you. And there's tons of physical benefits as well as mental benefits. But that was my pretty cool day yesterday. And you know what? I wouldn't have changed anything. Looking back on it, I probably wouldn't have had a max heart rate and pushed those numbers yesterday. And it was, you know what? I wouldn't have missed it for, the opportunity that I had with my son. And right now, it just shows that, sometimes putting family first is important. And, I still made the best of that situation in that day. And I try to live each and every single day like that. When we go to bed, I think it was Gandhi, like our body, we die. And when we wake up in the morning, it is reborn. And that's really what we have to live each day. Each day is a new beginning. And some days are tougher than others, but, we just got to live each day as its last and to the fullest. And that's what I try to do.
Do you feel those experiences that you had throughout just yesterday as an example, do you feel like more of those experiences have always been there and you've always been a calm, reflective athlete in the stuff that we've seen? Do you feel like they've always been there, but now you feel more awakened or more, I know we can say gratitude, but more acute awareness of those experiences that are happening in the moment as they're happening?
Yeah, for sure. Everything is a little bit more magnified. And, there's many more moments now in my life where I'll just have tears and I'll just tear up. But they're happy tears. They're emotions. They're good emotions. And I feel like I've had a lot more of those moments, and I feel like I'm living. Everything's magnified, like before, like, oh yeah, I might get teary-eyed a little bit here or there, but now it's magnified 3 times the amount. And I feel like I have a lot more love and things to share. And, I'm not afraid to hide those things from my son either. We've even done a little bit of meditation before, like breathing and things like that. And with that said, I'm definitely not a perfect human being. There's lots of things that I want to work on. And I think that goes with everyone. There's always things that we can work on, whether it's, our personal life or our job or our well-being. There's always things to work on. And everyone's heard the saying, the day you stop learning is the day you die. And that's the thing, as I'm always going to be continuing to learn. And some days are better than others, but the nice thing is we have a new opportunity every single day. But I do feel like everything has been magnified.
Makaio, I've heard you talk about, in those first couple of months before you had go ahead to start training again, that your words, like you just held them really close. And when you think about your life experience with your mom transitioning from this earth when you were, I think, 13 years old, and seeing her get sick and ultimately having that take her life, I can only imagine that you would hold him close and feel that gift that he has been given, that you got to live, that he gets you for more time. And I did you have moments like that? And I mean, were they just overwhelmingly powerful?
Yeah, I definitely had moments like that. They were really powerful. I'll always remember like my first run back after my accident, and I'm pushing him in because he was only 3 months at the time. When I was able to release be able to exercise again. I can't remember how long it was, 4 months or something like that. And I was able to run again. And I just remember pushing him in the stroller and just being so grateful just to be here with him. Moments like that I'll never forget. And he's getting to the age where he's starting to ask some questions, and he knows a little bit about my accent, and I'll tell him, and this is something that's always going to affect me. And the same thing as me losing my mother when I was 13 years old, it's always going to affect me. And, there's a lot of emotional energy with it. But, I think that part of that is a big driving force, what kind of fuels me today to make the most of each day, to make the most of each workout. to try to be my best. And, that's something I want to share with everyone, because you don't need to necessarily have something really big to go in your life to do something, but it will magnify everything. And that's why, whenever you go through something hard, you can always come out a better person. And a good way to kind of describe it is sometimes you might tell your child, like, that's hot, don't touch it. Well, you know what? They have to touch it. They have to experience it themselves. So, through life, I'm still experiencing things. He's still experiencing things, but yeah, like, I think the main thing is, I'm just trying to live life a little fuller, and I want him to see that. And it's been a blessing each and every single day.
Yeah, you guys, between your mom and you, and I don't know much about your dad, but from this lineage of like your mom to you to Makaio, like you guys are leaving this incredible legacy for the human race that, no matter how dark it gets, it's positive thinking is not like living in la la land. It's just understanding that with the dark, there's always light. And when we shine the light, when we flip that switch on, there is no more darkness. And we have the control, we have the ability to choose what we focus on. And I think for me personally, that's been the biggest gift of meditation, is creating this space between stimulus, missing the race, and your response to that. Because it is our response that, what we focus on expands, and our response is really what's driving what we see in the world. It's if I'm focused on the light, or if you're focused on the light, or you're focused about the gifts that this incredibly intense experience has gifted you. If you're focused on those gifts, you're going to see more gifts.
No, for sure. I've had lots of doors open since the accident, and yeah, a lot of it is your perspective in life. I think another thing to touch on is, like, what is happiness? And when I'm cycling, I'll often watch like TED Talks or other things on YouTube. And I remember this one TED Talk talked about the longest study or whatever. They studied all different types of people, from rich to poor, and the number one thing that they found was the reason why people are happy, no matter what condition you are, is the relationships that you have in life. That's something that I feel like we can all work on, because I feel like the more good relationships that you have, the more happiness you'll have. And it's kind of like, you can't be necessarily sitting there like waiting for happiness to come. Like it needs a certain type of recipe. It's like you're looking at lawn, like grass lawn, that is. And if you want it to grow, it's not going to grow. You're actually the one that's holding the watering can. You need to have your life grow and have some good relationships. And I think that's something that we all can work on, and build better relationships and build more of them. It's not necessarily easy, especially during this time when there's a COVID. But, thankfully there's social media platforms, and, like, make sure, hey, when's the last time you called and picked up the phone and talked to your family member, versus just text messaging, or just messaging, not messaging a friend, but just picking up and calling, like, hey, how are you doing? Because hearing someone's tone of voice is totally different from getting a text or an email.
This power, this community around you, and the positivity that you're emanating right now, and it seems like always. Do you feel like your community has shifted at all as a result of just being in your presence?
Yeah. I mean, I've had multiple doors open up, which has been a blessing. Like, it's amazing. Once one door will open, another one will open. It's sometimes doors close, and hey, that's okay too. And it kind of all rolls back to being in a good frame of mind, positivity, and I think with meditation that helps. For me, exercise that helps. Like if I'm not exercising, so I'm not necessarily 100% myself. And we all need certain things, and there's a recipe for happiness, and everything kind of ties together.
So what do you have to say to those athletes that say, my mind is too busy to meditate, or I tried it, but it doesn't work.
Well, it's almost like to that athlete that says that, I bet you they can find someone like, hey, how come you don't exercise? Oh, because I'm too busy. And it's really all about your priorities. Anyone can find 5 minutes to meditate. You don't even need 5 minutes. You can just take like, all right, and take 1 minute and just close my eyes, focus on breathing, just do a mini reset. And I do mini resets. It doesn't take much time at all. And yeah, it's prioritizing, I think. Yeah.
So what's the magic action that needs to happen when you don't want to meditate? What's that magic thing that you need to do to get yourself to meditate?
That's a good question. And I like this because it gets me thinking, because when I'm in this spot, I'm like, all right, I'm not quite myself. I need to meditate, and we need certain cues to do that. And I think sometimes if I feel like I'm getting a little bit agitated, which definitely happens, and my wife would say it happens more so after since the accident, post accident. So I need to think about myself as in sense of like your kind of tone of voice and how your response is. And if you can think of like, how genuine was my response? And if I feel like if I was a little bit short tempered or something, then I'd be like, hey, that's a good cue that I need to do probably a mini reset. I'm not quite myself, because if you're happy inside, it will exemplify what you, and if you're negative, I feel like it will kind of exemplify, like if you're negative to someone, you'll probably get negative feedback back. But if you're positive, you'll get more positive feedback back. And I think you answering that question was probably great for me, because that's something else I can work on, because there's certain times, let me tell you, being a parent is hard, and I absolutely love my son, but he is full on all of the time. And it's very tough for my wife and I to sometimes, because like sometimes if my wife didn't sleep well because he didn't sleep the greatest, or certain scenarios, it's tough. And so let me tell you, we all have moments, like my wife and I, and we found ways, and we're finding ways to kind of like, all right, take a step back and let's ground ourselves so that we're better towards each other. Because there's been times before that I've been heated or my wife has been heated, and it just really comes back to our son was full on because, hey, he didn't get much of a nap. And it's always like, life is always about problem solving. I'm like, okay, rewind. Why didn't he get a good nap? And it's all about having, I think, a good structure and have everything flowing. And there's days that are going to be challenging, and sometimes that's testing ourselves. And you know what? It's okay to be tested, and it's okay to be upset at times. But I think it's really, if you can learn from your past mistakes, and that same thing applies to triathlon. Like if you did something wrong with a triathlon during a race, like we always say, like, every time you do a race, you learn something. And you know what? It's true. Every single race, I still learn something, like what worked, what didn't work. Oh, I shouldn't have done this. I should have done that. Perfect example, because I did listen to the podcast with you and Sam Long about like Ironman Chattanooga. Well, Ironman Chattanooga, I had a couple of issues going on, and most people probably don't know it. One was I was leading into the race with actually a mechanical. I was running a 1x, and I put a brand new chain on, and it wasn't shifting correctly. And the cassette that I had was I had a 9 cog all the way up to like 32, but it wasn't working because I put a new chain on. But I'm like, what's going on? Long story short, the cassette, I had worn it out of after like so many races, which less than 1,000 miles. Well, long story short, I had to end up using a whole different wheel and different gearing. Like my biggest gear was a 50 in front and 11 in back, which normally if it's a 50 up front, it would be a 9 cog, which is almost the equivalent of a 56 up front and an 11 in the back. So one, I had issues, and I'm a lower cadence guy. So one, I wasn't able to ride with Sam during that race, but I did the best I could. And then the other thing is, I had after like 50 some, after almost like 50 full Ironmans, I had my first ever penalty. And that was, I grabbed water at the aid station and I tried to fill up my water as fast as possible. It was very hot that day. I tried filling up water as fast as possible and I threw it down right away. Well, I guess I threw it just past the last drop. And there really wasn't a way in order for me to fill up my water and throw it down because it was very short distance. So maybe I would have in the future, put the bottle and would have just like put it in my kit and raced with it that way. But I ended up spending actually a little bit more than I spent, probably about 6 minutes with that penalty because they handed me the watch. And when he handed me the watch, it stopped. And I'm just like talking to another person. And then I'm like, my watch isn't going. So it probably could have been it would have been a little better fight if I had those things. But you know what? That's the thing is there's always things that are going to happen. And, I could have been really upset about it, but you know what? I just did the best I could. And second was the best I could. And congrats. Cause you know what? Sam was the best on that day. And you just never know what kind of day you have, but you do through that whole thing. There was one thing I did have control of. I had control of my perspective in doing the best I could do, given the circumstances.
Pretty big challenges for someone racing at your like big opportunities, I should say, for someone racing at your level to have the bottle drop. It's so close. And the mind, this is what we call the untrained mind, wants to argue with it and resist it and fight for your version of it. But it sounds like you just rolled with it. But did you feel, was there in any of those instances, was there ever any rise of adrenaline and then quickly simmer down? Or do you feel like you just quickly shifted as quickly as possible into the solution?
Pretty much, yeah, the shift right away, because I feel like if your mind drifts and being negative, you just give up and then your race is done. So, I mean, thankfully, those 5 or 6 minutes in the penalty went by pretty quick. And I think partly if I was there alone, I think that could have been a very negative thing, as in our mind will start thinking like, oh, I'm in the penalty tent. Oh, I need to make up this time. But you know what? I just kind of was distracted by it because someone else is in the penalty and he was telling his scenario. I told mine and, chat back and forth. And before you know it, the time went up. It's, that's part of life. It probably necessarily, in my eyes, it wasn't the fairest call because past that last chance drop, there was probably at least 100 bottles, and it was just, I happened to be right next to the one ref that gave me the penalty. And, but that's part of life. You never know what's going to happen. And like I said, when you go through hard times, you always have to keep that positive attitude and perspective. And I like to think that, everything happens for a reason. And that's what I always in the back of my mind. I'm like, everything happens for a reason. And like, who knows if I didn't get that penalty, I could have had a bike accident and something could have happened. I always try to look at the positive side and, if something didn't go right, what can I do to change it? There's things we can control and there's other things we can't. And I think the most important thing is focus on the things that we can control.
That mindset training, I'm just thinking about this. The mindset training is you're doing this every day for that very purpose. You're training yourself to be prepared to acknowledge what's happening and then shift quickly, because there's no time to dwell on and ruminate on on the what ifs and fighting for your limitations. And it almost seems like you shifted in that race to an extreme sense of gratitude because you gave a shout out to Sam at some point along the race and the run, and just told him that he was most likely going to win. How did that feel?
Hey, he's a very talented athlete and he works hard, just like all of us. And, you put in, it's like chopping wood, you got to put in your time and that was his day. And, there's no reason for me to be negative about it because you know what, like there's been days, like Lake Placid, the day came together for me. But you know what? There's like, I think 6 or 7 other athletes who could have won. I think there was actually 6 or 7 previous Ironman champions that won Ironman. So it was really a stacked field. But you know what? everyone has a story. And you know what? Someone could come on and say like, yeah, I think I could have won that day, but because of this, and this didn't happen. And you know what? That's entirely true. That could have happened. And but you know what? On that given day, it was my time to shine. For Lake Placid, for Ironman Chattanooga, it was Sam Long's day to shine. And you know what? I hope I have lots of more days I can shine in the future. But you know what? If not, it's not the end of the world. Like, I'm not out to see how many victories I can get. I'm out to enjoy the journey. For me, it's not about, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. The better I do, the better person I am. That's totally not it. It doesn't matter how many victories I have. For me, it's enjoying the journey and really setting the example to others. And like my son, like I want him to know like, hey, never give up, do the best you can, because you know what? That goes a long ways, not just in triathlon, but every aspect in life, through school, through your job, through relationships, through everything. And that's the really example that I want to do. And, you know, hey, I'm going to do the best I can to win another Ironman. Hopefully I can win many. But you know what? If I don't, that's okay. At least I tried my best.
So you have raced many Ironmans. Are you at 50 yet or over 50?
I think Ironman South Africa would have been my 50th finish. But unfortunately, yeah, right before that, we were out in South Africa in February and March, and my wife is from Cape Town, and we were in Cape Town, and we were gonna scoot right up to Port Elizabeth to do the race, but literally 2 weeks right before. The world started blowing up with COVID, so we were struggling to try to get back, and we ended up getting on pretty much paid an arm and a leg, but got on the last flight. And Delta said this is the last flight from South Africa to the United States for the unforeseeable future. So you know what? We were just really grateful just to be on the flight getting back. Just for my wife and I, America is home, and we wanted to be back on our soil, and just wanted to be safe. And thankfully, we did get back. So.
Okay, so you've got 49 under your belt. That in the 50th, I'm sure, is going to be coming as soon as this stuff gets back online, which I think it's going to be pretty soon here. Ironman's been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, but for many years, you've been self-coached and quite successful at self-coaching. And we talked a little bit off the mic. You're a Pisces, so I know that you have a strong intuition and connection in with just kind of like how you feel and everything. But at this point in your career, what was driving you to reach out and tell us a little bit about your coach as well?
See, well, I wanted to be the best I could be, and I didn't want to leave any stone unturned. And what it was I think I went to school at University of New Hampshire, and a former another alumni reached out to me. I don't know if I actually necessarily met him. I'm trying to think the connection, but we both ran on the track and field team. I think we might have overlapped a little bit, but he wanted to reach out, and he was like, "Hey, I work for this company called Inside, and you do all these biomarker tests on the bike, and it kind of shows you what you need to focus on and working and to improve, to be a better athlete." And he's like, I'll if you do the test, I'll give you the information. So I was like, sure, sounds good. So I did the test, and he's like, hey, you know what? I would love to get you in touch with CEO founder. And he coaches like a lot of people in like Tour de France, like Peter Sagan and those names. I'm like, oh, sounds good. And July of last year, I went to Germany, and in Germany, I did a bunch of tests, like VO2, lactate threshold, and a whole bunch of things. And I ended up meeting up with him, and it seemed like a good fit. And I wanted to be my best. And he was interested in it too. He never coached a triathlete. So I wanted to give it a go. Right after Ironman Lake Placid, I won Ironman Lake Placid, and he goes, "Oh, looks like you don't need me anymore." And he's like, "I haven't even started working with you yet." And then I started working with him after Ironman Lake Placid, and very heavy focused on the bike. and very tough. It got me really strong, really fit in the bike. Obviously with triathlon, I think it's all about having a balance with the swim, bike, and run. I think my run kind of took a little bit of a hit in a way, but a lot of it is, like I said, having that balance. And sometimes it takes time in order to get those. Whenever you do something new, you need to try to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So that was rolling into Chattanooga, and then literally right in between Chattanooga and Kona was about 2 weeks, and I've done that multiple times before. I kind of like doing back-to-back Ironmans 2 weeks. I didn't really have a training schedule. So I was like, okay, I just kind of did what kind of worked for me. And I mean, long story short, I think it was very good. And I'll definitely take some pieces that I've learned from that to grow from it. But the communication really wasn't there. And he was, I think, really focused on the triathlon, really focused on the cycling industry and the Tour de France and working with a lot of teams and like that. So we're kind of doing my own thing now. But you know what? It was a very valuable lesson, and if I had to rewind, I would do the exact same thing. Communication is definitely key, but I learned a ton, and I'm still learning like what works. I feel like right now, I know what works for me in the swim, I know what works for me in the bike, and I know what works for me in the run. I just need to put it all together, which I know I can do now, and now I'm just waiting for a race to show it.
I think it's important to, because I've been self-coached now for about 6 years too, and you've got to have that trust in yourself. But also, I heard one conversation you had, which I like to wake up and kind of feel into what I'm going to do. I kind of have an idea of what the workout is, but you had mentioned like it's great to just wake up and look at a plan and just not have to think about it and just execute. Do you find that having this openness, having this willingness to fail, willingness to tip the scale of the swim, bike, and run one way for a little bit and come back, do you feel like that's a solid recipe long term to really get to what is the unique balance for you as an individual athlete being self-coached?
Yeah, it's a number of things, and I think it's very important for one, you have to be happy and enjoy what you're doing first off, because if you're not motivated, you're not going to want to do it. So first is like the motivation and being happy with the workouts. Second is I think mixing it up a little bit for your mind and also your body. Mixing up the stimulus, and I mean that can even be from the changing up the time that you swim, and changing the workouts a little bit. But I coach a number of athletes too, and I always tell them, my first conversation I have with them, I say, get a journal, write down the things that work and write down the things that don't work, because go through that later on, because you're going to find things, what works for one person might not work for another. And a lot of it is up in the mind, because if you can believe you can do something, you can. Like having a positive mindset can do so much. If you can believe you can push X amount of watts on the bike, you're going to do it, versus like, maybe I think I can, we'll see what I can do. Having and believing and doing the best. And you know what? You might fail, but you know what? Sometimes you learn the most when you fail, and it makes you hungrier too. When you do fail, because you will fail, what you have to do is like, all right, I have to learn from it. It's going to make me stronger. And that's what I've done. And do I have the secret recipe? For me, I feel like I'm always working on it, and it's always a work in progress. I remember listening to a podcast way back in the day about Craig Alexander. He won his first Ironman World Championships, and he's like, oh, yes, this is the formula. But I remember him saying, like, you know what? It changed all the time a little bit, because there's so many different factors with how you sleep, how your body recovered from that one workout. Oh, I had this issue in my calf bothering me. I had to take a little bit more. So everything is always changing. And I think it's important to be open to change and try new things, and not be in that frame of mind. Like being stubborn. And hey, I'm stubborn, and sometimes it's bit me in the butt. But like, I've learned from it. Like, hey, you know what? Maybe that person was right. Or maybe I should have done it this way. It's always good to keep an open mind, even when, because I am stubborn. But I feel like I've accomplished a fair amount of things because of some of my stubbornness. But there's been other times where it's like, oh, you know what? That person was probably right. But it goes back to like, what? I had to learn myself.
Yeah. And there was a study at a Harvard University, I think it was in 2011, really interesting study. I think it made the cover of Time magazine, which is super cool. But one of the things that they saw after 8 weeks of 20-minute meditations was that it increased gray matter in certain parts of the brain. One of those parts of the brain was our ability to take in the perspectives of others. And I feel like in the climate of this world, what a beautiful gift we could be giving humanity to just put a little more gray matter in that area of our brain that says, oh, hey, yeah, like me, it's not always my way or the highway. And stubbornness is, our meditation teacher says, like, live the life that you love and be really stubborn about it. Meaning, like, remove the doubt. You got to nullify the skepticism. You got to keep living from this, this place in your heart. And one of the things that you said earlier was, I think you were talking about shining and not hiding behind like, that your heart is open, and that's a vulnerable quality. Do you feel like, how do you feel vulnerability plays into performance?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think just just going into, really you have to expect, what's the saying, like, you have to almost go in with like almost no expectations, and almost expect nothing. And if something beautiful happens, it comes, just having an open mind with everything. There's so many ways that you can branch off, that you could have really long conversations and so many things to tap into. And, what you just mentioned about with the mind and expanding, your gray matter. And going back to the other question about like, oh, athletes don't have time to meditate. You have to think of your mind as a muscle, the same as what we swim, bike, and run. You need to think of because if you think about it, and lots of people have asked me like, oh, wow, you do that? That's so physically demanding. But you know what? It comes down to, it's our mind that's the driving force, because we would have never done this, and this without our mind. Like our mind is the first driver, then it's the body. And I really feel like the leading thing in sports right now is the mind. And that's where I feel like sometimes there's limits. It's in the mind, not necessarily in our body. And the limits that we have are in our mind. So I really feel like obviously there's lots of technology out there in the sport, and there's things that help minimally, and there's things that help a lot. But you know what? Even if you're given something that says like, hey, if you do this, you're going to be X amount faster. If you believe, a lot of it is, if you believe in it, you will. Now, there are some things that are more, I think, like placebo, like I just mentioned, like if you believe. But there's other things like, putting a carbon plate and sometimes shoes. They've actually kind of measured that it does help a little bit. But you know what? And I've tried to cross my T's and dot my I's with everything, with swim, bike, and run. So I am prepared, the best prepared. And I think preparation deals not with just equipment. And I think the biggest thing now is the mind. And I think more and more people are tapping into it. And that's a very scary thing, because, it's like no one could break a 4-minute mile, and then it happened. No one can break 8 hours. It's happening. So I think it's an amazing thing, but, yeah, there's much more that the human mind and the body can do.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. And, this body that we live in it's a temple. We want to love it. We want to rest it, because we ask so much of it. The other thing we want to do is pay attention to our nutrition. And, it seems as though you've made some switches with your diet where you're eating a mostly plant-based diet. Is that correct?
Yeah, mostly plant-based. I've definitely tried to clean up my diet. I mean, I won't say I'm 100%. And that's me coming from I grew up on a small farm. Like the only meat that I ate growing up was the meat that my dad and I harvested, such as like venison, which is deer, ducks, turkey, things like that. I think from someone having my background from when I was a hunter to like, oh, you can't eat meat anymore. And my aunts, or sorry, I have multiple uncles and cousins now that are dairy farmers and things like that. Now, I will say there have been months where I haven't touched any meat, and there has been months where I haven't touched any dairy. I think the main thing is, like what you said, our body is a temple, and really be resourceful of what you're putting into your body. And I think a lot of Americans have the misconception like, all right, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I need protein. Which is meat. And you know what? Kind of like the periodic table or the food table, like that's what they kind of suggested, and that's what you kind of went with. Oh, you need your dairy, but you know what? That's not true. You can get all your protein sources from plant based, and you've heard the saying like, "Oh, you want to be as strong as an ox." Well, an ox only eats plants. With that said, I think going back to triathlon, it's all about having a balance, every little bit in moderation. Like you don't want to be, because there have been in scenarios when I've been like, all right, man, the choices that I have to eat plant based, it seems like if you look into the ingredients, they put some kind of type of dairy, whether it's butter or egg or in everything. So like for me, like if okay, that looks like a good muffin, but that muffin might have some egg in it, might have some butter, but I'm like, you know what? It's not going to kill me. It's one of those things that's like, you know what? When I have control, I'm going to try to make the most of what I can. Like I was with my dad, and I ate a little bit of wild game with him, and I like to say almost there's like cheat days or whatever. Like I remember seeing Joe Gamble's after Ironman Lake Placid, and I was just so hungry. And I was eating something that had some meat and egg in it, and he was like, "Wait a second, you're doing what?" So I'm like, "I have cheat days. I'm not going to. I mean, because I know there's out there like, oh, you're either 100% or you're 100% out, and I'm going to live a little bit, as in I'm not going to. I'll tell you what, I eat a ton less dairy, and a ton less meat than I used to. And, long story short, eating a lot of meat and dairy isn't necessarily the best thing for you. And it's not necessarily the best thing for the environment either. It really isn't. For me, I feel like I try to make a smoothie every single day. I try to eat like whole foods, and in the sense that, when you go shopping at the grocery store, pick things that don't have like 50 ingredients in them. Pick things that are like, organic vegetables. And, it's not like, oh, I eat salads every day and I'm rail thin or something like that. No, you get tons of protein from oats, from pasta, from rice, from breads and nuts and legumes and things like that. So, yeah, long story short, I just want to touch on it because I'm going to say like, oh, I'm 100%. I cleaned up my diet. I ate more plant-based, but, yeah, that I've tried to take the step to really work on my diet. The only supplements I take, is vitamin D, because our body's kind of hard to absorb vitamin D through, even though we're athletes and out in the sun. There's that, and also an iron supplement. I actually listened to what athlete that you just interviewed, and he takes the same supplement as me. And Matt,
McElroy?
ITU athlete.
Oh, Matt
Yes.
Matt
McElroy.
McElroy.
Oh yeah, he's
Yes, and
awesome.
he takes the same one as me. I think it was like Mega Foods Blood Builder or whatever like that.
Mhm, mhm.
That's pretty much the main things that I take. I take that and vitamin D for supplements. But I have athletebloodtest.com. You can go on and get your blood tested. Very simple to do. I've done that multiple times just to make sure that my levels are okay with like electrolytes and everything, because you got to think of yourself as a car. You want to put in a high performance car, as in like you're racing. You want to make sure you're putting good octane fuel and good oil, and kind of the same thing. We have to, at least I look at it as I want to treat my body like I am a very high performance vehicle.
We're
The
talking
fight for the microphone. Go ahead, Beach.
because I always forget to ask this question, but what does your nutrition look like for racing? I know you use Infinite. Is that the sole resource of most of your calories, or like how do you play that game for Ironman? Let's talk Ironman.
Yeah, so like it really kind of starts the night before. I mean, and I try to eat a little bit earlier. I think I used to train with Simon Lessing when I lived in Boulder, Colorado, and I remember him saying, eating a little bit of an earlier meal just so your body has a little bit more time to digest. And I usually go for like eat something with not too much fiber. So it's really simple, like rice, mainly just rice now, rice. And I'll put in like some kind of like avocado dressing or something like that to kind of mix it up, or throw some avocados in there. And then in the morning, I'll eat I'll have a black coffee, and I'll have some like gluten-free plain bagels or whatever in the morning. And then pretty much right from once I'm racing it on the bike, it's all liquid nutrition, and it's all with Infinite. And thankfully, Infinite does have plant-based options. You can get plant-based protein, and with the Infinite on the bike, I have 2 bottles, and I carry them with me, so I don't need special needs. And I have I think, was it 900 to 1,000 calories in each bottle, and there's a little bit of protein in there for because if there isn't, you will feel a little bit hungry, like you'll need to eat a bar or something like that. And that's why I can do everything on a liquid diet with Infinite Nutrition. So that's been, I tried them a long time ago and I liked them. And then I had a different nutrition sponsor. And then at the kind of towards the middle tail end of 2018, I was like, hey, can you make me something? Because I knew Michael, the owner. And he was like, sure, Matt, I'll make it, which is really grateful. And he made up, a concoction that kind of would fit my needs and what I was racing, with sodium, electrolyte levels, calories. And I used that for 2018 Ironman World Championships when I finished 6th. And that was like the best. Since then, I felt the best I have with racing. Like I don't have any GI issues. I feel strong, and I don't know any other nutrition company that does it that's custom. Like you call up, you'll talk to someone, and they'll ask you a whole bunch of different questions, and you can dial in what you want with everything, with protein, aminos, calories, flavor, everything, which to me is like, it's really the 4th discipline in like triathlon. It's not just swim, bike, and run, but when you get to the Ironman distance, you need to have your nutrition dialed in.
So those 2 water bottles are super concentrated, and then you just take water at every aid station.
Yep.
Or okay.
Yeah. So I'm pretty much self-supported, so I don't need to really rely on anyone, which is great.
So you're going to transition into this new supposed format of Ironman quite easily, where they're saying that
there's going to be a little more self-serve.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
So you've talked about, well, first of all, I loved your answer about being, eating mostly plants or plant-based or whatever we want to label it. Doesn't really matter, because I felt vulnerability there too. Like meaning you have found what works for you right now. And tomorrow you may wake up and your body needs something different, or, 2 years from now. And, that's the message that I hope that the listeners heard, was that you really want to find what works for you. And no hard lines. No hard lines. I have found that a plant-based diet, a vegan diet, works really, 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 really well for me. But if it didn't, and if my body was suffering because of it, I would need to look at that, and I would need to go in and really ask for some answers. So thank you for that, for sharing, because I think this is why we have so much separation in our existence, is like, I'm vegan, you're not, you eat meat, I don't eat meat. And it's like, just know yourself, just know yourself.
Yeah. And you know what? I think I think a good thing to know that everyone is on a different stage in life right now. You can't be like, oh, I can't believe this person does this. Oh, I can't believe this person does that. Each and every person is on a different stage in life. And not only that, is, you know what? They have a totally different past than you. And you know what? That's why, speaking about relationships, everyone is wired differently than just because I say something to you or someone else, they might think something different. And it's, as in, perceive it a different way, just because we're wired completely different. And that's why I think it's important to have communication, so someone kind of really understands why you have this reasoning, even though it might not be right, or you might think it's not right, but it might be right for that person. And I think really accepting that. And I think it's tough sometimes, because sometimes when we think in our head, like, that's definitely not right. And a really interesting example, and you know what, he might be right for him. Like you said, everyone has a different diet. Pete Jacobs was completely plant-based, and promoting it and everything. And then I think he went completely like carnivore. And people are like, oh man, you're gonna get cancer and get this, and you know what, he's on his own path. And I'm not going to be ridicule and be like, oh, he's doing this and he's doing that. He's on his own path. And you know what, as really, long story short, what I want for Pete Jacobs and everyone is happiness. And that they're calm, and they're spreading love to everyone. And really, that's really what I want. And I hope others can really, share that as well.
I will, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to an episode that BJ and I recorded, where somebody asked us, what do you think of the Pete Jacobs diet? And I had to look it up. I was like, what's the Pete Jacobs diet? And it was, it's like carnivore. And so our answer was very similar. That, it's what works for him. And that's the most important thing. So, that day back in 2017, like I said, this is the first time you and I have talked. But that day, it was like, I think we were all with you, and Jillian and Makaio. And I remember thinking about your wife and your son so much. And just, I meditated that day and held them in my heart. And I know that, many people around the world were also holding you guys in their heart. And I just wanted to give you a platform, if you wanted to say anything to people who have supported you on that day and since then.
I mean, from the bottom of my heart, I thank everyone, that was thinking me that day. I mean, this is something that's going to affect me, like I said, the rest of my life. There's times and moments in my life when I realized how close I really was. And, the Lord has given me another chance in life. And it's just can be very fragile. But, I just, through what we've talked about, the whole thing, I just want to give back to, everyone. And hopefully, if they have listened to this, that they can take something to change their life in a positive way. And I guess that's kind of through this whole thing. I remember Chris Lieto coming to see me, and he was one of the few people that actually came and saw me when I was in the hospital. And I remember talking to him, and I'm like saying, Chris, I feel like there's a sign from God that I should be here right now. What is it? What is it? And like he said, like, you know what? It's gonna be something that you might find later down the road or whatever. And it's true. Like doors have opened. And with many aspects in life, and I think a big thing is I want to continue to inspire others, not just with racing, but to be their best. And I hope and pray that people can see me as an ambassador for really life, and to make the most of it. And there's, like anything in life, if you look at the negative, you'll find more negative, more negative, more negative. But if you focus on being positive, more doors will open. And you know what? There's been so many times that I've taken a couple of steps back, but then I've taken a few more steps forward. And that's what just life is. There's going to be problem solving. There's going to be hard days. I tear up more so when I'm around my son, just being grateful that I am here and with my family, and that I have a second chance. And when I finished really well in 2018, my main goal was to finish what I had started in 2017, because I wasn't able to finish Ironman World Championships, and I just wanted to finish what I started. And I'll always remember that moment and finishing the line, and just throwing my hands up in the air and just being grateful to the Lord that I was still alive. And so many, as you can imagine, so many emotions rolling through, but I was very grateful to be alive and just share it with everyone. And I hope people could see that, and they know the story, that and that's what you want to feel. You want to have moments that make you feel alive. And that's why I still do Ironman. That's why I still do the things that make me feel alive. When I go out and do a long run, and I come back and take a freezing cold shower, I do that sometimes because it makes me feel alive. It makes me feel good. And I'm alive. Do the things that make you feel alive. Like if you live someplace where it's cold, and it's in the spring, and you go for a run. And I remember doing this when I was in high school, like in March or April, jumping in water, and that's like probably 40 degrees. And you want to do the things that make you feel alive. And that's that's one reason why I probably take a few cold showers more so than some other people, because I want to do the things that make you feel alive, and hopefully spread that to other people.
Oh my gosh, that's a beautiful way to end this conversation. Thank you. I see you just settling into this new level of life and power and connectedness. And we are all better off that you're still here and sharing this message. It's a really important message. And I'm so grateful that you get to do it on the stage of endurance sports and beyond, really. We never know what the trickle effect is. So thank you so much for your time today. We're really, really grateful to meet you in this way. And I'm sure our paths will cross again.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for having me, and appreciate it. And hopefully I can make this a positive thing, so it affects one person and another person and another person in a positive way.